Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another episode of the Hardcore Casual with your boy, Base the Kid. As always, please like and subscribe, share with a friend, a colleague, a relative, an associate, an enemy, any and all in between. It's appreciated. Now, the main reason for this video is there's been a little situation that's happened with the WBC, David Benavidez and Dmitry Bivol. So I want to kind of address that. There's a couple other small things that we'll get to beforehand. So don't forget, as I said, like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. But without further ado, let's get into it. All right, so one of the main reasons for this video, there was the Ade, or was it the Ariel and Ade show on Tuesday. And shout out to Ade. He made mention of the fact that when it came to the last crescendo, Benavidez versus Bivol 2, David Benavidez went over there, but he flew home before the main event started. Which, if you're not like me and kind of see the angle and see the play, and I'll give that to you, but why would you go all that way, which is probably about 13-hour flight maybe from the States, 13 to 15 hours, give or take. In fact, he's on the West Coast, so it's probably even longer. He's probably closer to 16, 17. So why would you go all the way to Riyadh, knowing that you're the number one contender for, I guess, the winner in theory because of the WBA and WBC interim belts that you hold, yet not even stay to watch the competition that you could potentially be going against up close, seeing what they do, analyzing, studying them, and then calling for the winner after the fight? Why would you do that? Well, I can tell you why I think he did it. Personally, I don't think he wants to fight either person. He definitely didn't want to fight Benavidez. He may think that he's got more of a chance of beating someone like Dmitry Bivol, but now I guess you would say if they're going to have a trilogy, then he maybe ends up getting pushed back further. I saw an interview where he said, Callum Smith would be a good opponent to fight next. Now Callum's obviously now got that WBO interim strap, so you could now say, okay, well, you've got the WBC, WBA, now you could get the WBO. So you could be a mandatory or the number one in 3 bodies. So the only one you now got to wait for is the IBF. And the IBF is Michael Eifert, which means probably you'd have to, obviously then have to fight him for that. And you could be the undisputed interim light heavyweight champion of the world. But that notwithstanding, okay, Callum Smith seems like it could be, maybe to you might think that's an easier fight overall. He does things that you've seen. He's a bit more easy to game plan for, in your opinion. You reckon that you can outwork him. You don't have the size advantage on him, though. Well, sizing maybe in terms of fat, maybe, but in terms of just physical, arm length, body, like all of that stuff, like he clearly dwarfs you. He's about 6'4", whereas you're like 6'1", wide back, So yeah, there's that. But I still think his idea, I don't think he wants to fight Riyadh. I don't think he wants to be on these Riyadh season cards. My thought process is that he knows that if he goes onto those Riyadh season cards, he doesn't get that certain level of protection that he would get being in America on those PBC and Al Heyman cards. Outside of that, he would get matched tough, which he claims he wants, but yet he doesn't really seem to be doing the stuff that it takes to kind of be match tough, if that makes sense. I guess we'll have to wait and see on where that goes. The other prevailing theory is he's spoken several times about wanting to move up to cruiserweight and face Zurdo Ramirez. Is 175 now becoming the same struggle that 168 was? I mean, probably it is. It probably is a big struggle to make because He doesn't live a disciplined life really outside of camp, if we're going to be honest. And maybe he looks at Zurdo Ramirez and thinks, well, he came from super middleweight as well, so if he could do it and he can reign up there, I can probably have some chances. Plus he might be easier because he's not a mover. He's just going to kind of stand, and he'll stand in front of me, so to speak, and we can just trade and we'll see who's stronger. Well, Zurdo Ramirez has shown that people that just want to come forward and try to throw volume don't bother him at this point in time. His movement has become excellent over the last couple of years. He's really been working well with his trainers, and the fact that he's obviously got the speed advantage over a lot of the bigger guys is also benefiting him, and he's got a very good defense plus a very good chin. Now, Benavidez might have the good chin, defense ain't great, but it's not terrible. Decent offense, but the footwork is horrible. But that could be the trade-off. And even if you're going to leave PBC, you go with Oscar De La Hoya, there's a chance where you don't have to be involved in the Riyadh season stuff, because Oscar likes to protect his prize assets. Anyone that has a O, Oscar will match them nice and softly. So, you know, considering that Zurdo is obviously defeated now, and so is Jaime Munguia, who I don't even believe is actually with Oscar, but when the O's gone, maybe he's a bit more willing to kind of throw you to those other areas. With Benavidez, he might have options there, so I can see them trying to take that route. So personally, I don't think he wanted any parts of either Bivol or Benavidez, and I think that ultimately is the reason why he didn't stay. He went there for the free flight, for the optics, to get his face on a major platform, knowing that obviously he will be viewed and, you know, around the world when he makes certain takes, and when he's just there, it's a big media opportunity. But, you know, when it was time to catch that flight, he went and arranged a flight that was long. You know, you could have arranged a flight 3 hours later, 4 hours later, 5 hours later. Like, why specifically would your flight be at the times when you know this event is still taking place? So yeah, leave your comments and kind of let me know what you guys think regarding that. But yeah, my opinion is he doesn't really want to fight either of those guys. He doesn't want to be involved in Riyadh because there's a lot less protection there, and we talk about the PBC curse a lot. Every time people step outside the bubble, it doesn't seem to end too well for them. So let's see how that one unfolds. But yeah, leave your comments, let me know your opinion. Going back to the previous segment, obviously just talking about Benavidez and leaving Riyadh early. Well, the thought process is still there. However, the optics now may have changed, because the WBC have ordered Dmitry Bivol to face David Benavidez. Firstly, I don't know why they would order that, quote unquote. I mean, to be fair, they haven't given a date yet to say, oh, purse bids will be by this date if you can't arrange, but they've ordered it. So basically they've installed him as their mandatory. He's now the mandatory for the belt. But it's funny that they've done this, because the next in line for defense is actually the IBF. The IBF allowed Michael Eifert allowed a step aside for the rematch of Benavidez and Bivol. So they're actually next in the queue. So the WBC making that order, again, this is without context of whether or not that they've set any date that it must be agreed by in purse bids. If they're just putting, he is our next in line and this is the next person that will fight for the belt, that's one thing. But if they are in fact saying, nope, that, you know, he must fight him next, or this is your next fight regardless, otherwise you will be stripped, then yeah, they've jumped the gun and they are actually ahead of schedule, because I believe it's the IBF next, then it's it might be the WBO. No, actually, I think WBO, then the WBC, and then the WBA. I believe that's the current rotation of how they should go. Now, luckily, you've got Benavidez, who's got both the WBC and the WBA. So, in that sense, whenever they're supposed to go is when he gets his opportunity. But obviously this causes a problem, because if you're going to have a third fight between Dmitry Bivol and Artur Beterbiev, at this point in time, likely there's two belts no longer there. It's no longer for undisputed. Now that doesn't actually mean much to either guy at this particular point, because Beterbiev became undisputed, and he lost undisputed to Dmitry Bivol, who became undisputed. So all the belts are there. So they've had all the belts, they've had the recognition. You get stripped of a couple now to do the trilogy, cool. But the way that I would see it playing out, and the way that would make most sense, especially when a lot of people said, we want to see these guys fight each other again, but maybe let's have a little fresh matchup in between to build the anticipation. They can both work on some stuff. Well, Dmitry Bivol said that he's got a couple injuries and he needs some time to rest, and then he go into a camp later on. Beterbiev's about to start Ramadan, so he won't really be looking at anything for now. Probably not until late summer, early autumn at the earliest. So we're talking end of July, maybe end of July, early August, or we're talking like sort of September, maybe even October. He might wait until. But this would be what my ideal scenario would be in this situation. So if Dmitry Bivol's got to satisfy mandatory, right? Well, if I was him, I would say, okay, drop the IBF, because Michael Eifert he'll either be elevated to full champ or he'll fight for a vacant title. Now I don't believe he's actually interim. I just think he's number one. So I don't think he's the interim champion. So which means that he'll end up fighting for a vacant title. So what do? Okay, so you install Artur Beterbiev as the number 2 in the IBF rankings. Due to the length of time he held that belt for almost 9 years. So he should have the opportunity to be able to win the belt back in that scenario, especially as he didn't take a knockout loss. It was a majority decision loss. So you have Eifert versus Beterbiev. Then on the other side, if you've got David Benavidez, who is actually wanting to take on one of these guys and isn't blowing smoke and mirrors and having mirages all over the place, then you do Dmitry Bivol versus David Benavidez. I say you do both of these between the months of July and September. Yeah? Early September as well. So you do that. Okay, so now what you will then have is, and actually what might be an idea, funny enough, because this year you've got Canelo Alvarez. He's doing his Cinco de Mayo in Riyadh as opposed to in Las Vegas, but he's going to Las Vegas for the Crawford fight. So what maybe you do, if possible, because it will be a Riyadh sponsored event, you do your Canelo Crawford, which is possibly undisputed. You do Michael Eifert versus Artur Beterbiev, and you do Dmitry Bivol versus David Benavidez. That way, if let's say Beterbiev beats Eifert, okay, so he's now the IBF champion again. If Dmitry Bivol were to beat Artur Beterbiev, David Benavidez, okay, well, he's now satisfied his WBC and WBA mandatory obligations, so he's only got one more to go, which is the WBO. So at that point, you've got those two. They've taken out the next two of the next mandatory contenders. They can then have a fight February to close off that season of Riyadh, and then whoever wins that becomes undisputed again, and then must face Callum Smith, who is the next, will be the next in line with the WBO and will be the last mandatory to take to have their crack at the apple. And then you do that fight at some point next year. That's a way it could play out if you wanted to keep undisputed together. If not, then ultimately you could do the situation where Beterbiev faces Eifert for the IBF, Benavidez and Bivol face each other to clear those two. Bivol then drops the WBO. You do the 3 belt unification with Beterbiev in, say, again, December, if it's possible to do it in December, you do it in December, but more than likely maybe be February, so just under 6 months time to prepare. And then those three, or whoever wins out of those two belts, or even if it's Ifer and Benavidez who become on, okay, you do that fight there, and then in the summer for the following year, which will be 2026, or even maybe the early fall. So again, we're talking September, and that point there, you will do the winner versus Callum Smith, if he still has the belt, for undisputed. Maybe even you do it in October on the next Canelo card, which he will be doing February and October that year for Riyadh season. So maybe you do that. You have him and you have the Canelo card as well. So maybe, to me, that sounds like a great idea. That sounds like a good free fight combination which works. So just to clarify, September, you've got Canelo versus Crawford, you've got Benavidez versus Ifer, and you've got Bivol versus Benavidez. And then the winners of those two fights will face each other in February the following year. If they have to drop the WBO, then Callum Smith gets that. You also put Callum Smith on the same card, and you make him fight someone for that WBO belt. Those winners then face each other the end of the next Riyadh season in that October, or even off of Riyadh season, but probably it will be there for the undisputed, and you go again. I think that would be the best possible move. It keeps things fresh. It means that they get the chance to have their trilogy, but it doesn't have to be an immediate one. Plus it also means that the belts don't stagnate and other people get a chance to be in the mix and get the chance to upset the apple cart. Because ultimately, even if other people take those belts, they can still have a trilogy down the line. It doesn't necessarily have to be because they are they can have the trilogy without the belts. So maybe both of them lose, and then they have the trilogy to see, okay, this is just to settle it between us. Who's the best between us? Let me know what you think. If any of that makes sense, I hope it does, but let me know what you guys think, and if that is an idea that you wouldn't mind seeing. Personally, I think it makes perfect sense. It keeps all the rotations happy, keeps the sanctioning bodies happy, and it keeps all the mandatories happy, keeps everything ticking along. That's my opinion. But yeah, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to leave a comment. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. I am going to be heading up to Tottenham Hotspur Stadium shortly for that second press conference. I will try and get you as much content as possible. But yeah, with that being said, thank you for watching. That's the Hardcore Casual, out.